My name is David Farrant and you're watching DFTVX.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for sort of coming round for this final talk of the day, and we've really saved you know, our David here. We're very lucky to have him here. So I was about to say save the best for last, but actually I've been to the other talks today and they've been brilliant, so it's sort of, you know, on a par. So but David is really fascinating, and I've interviewed him before for national newspapers because he's a completely fascinating man, and I've also been reading his he's got a 3-part autobiography, and the first 2 parts are out, and I've actually read the middle part, which is to do with what we're talking about today, which is to do with the Highgate vampire case and David's involvement in it, but also to do with the way that the police and court systems dealt with a case that was very nuanced and had an awful lot to do with the occult, and they didn't understand it, they were afraid, but also I mean, I think my reading of the case is there was massive injustice done, because this, I mean, all of this was prior to the law that came in whereby the police have to record your testimony, and they have to record. So a lot of the stuff that went on, which David will tell you about in a bit, would now not hold up in court at all, because, you know, these laws have been changed so that you don't get the police abusing their position of power. So if we'll start, David, with tell us a little bit about what exactly the Highgate vampire case is and where it began. What were the goings on that made?
It began in the late 1960s. Originally, I don't believe in vampires. I think it's absolute nonsense. I do not believe in blood-sucking vampires. This was a psychic phenomenon, unexplained, and albeit maybe malignant, because it was reputed and reported rather to have psychically attacked 2 people in the lane that runs down alongside Hubbard Summit. This was back in the late 60s, early 1970s. And one thing led to another, and my society, the British Psychic and Occult Society, began an investigation into the sightings. For that purpose, we had people, had members stationed inside Highgate Cemetery at night, and we also went there in the daytime to get photographic evidence. And I was also looking for some logical explanation that might have given some causings for the repeated sightings. But basically, and it's such a long story, I'd have to be really quick to answer. For that case, the Highgate vampire case has been reported worldwide. You know, from Canada to New Zealand to Malaysia, all over the world. And unfortunately, it's tended to drag my name with it, because of the later case in 1974, which I'll go into very well briefly later. But I was taken to court. The first occasion was in 1970. I had gone into Highgate Cemetery with 5 other people. We went by car and we parked the cars outside the cemetery at night. We climbed over the wall, and I know technically that is trespassing, but at the same time everybody was doing it at that stage. The cemetery was open to the public in the daytime. I mean between 10 and when it got dark. But you were not allowed in there at night, but as I said, technically I was trespassing, or we were trespassing. But that aside, we didn't cause any damage in there. And the thing is that that period of time, people were actually going into Highgate Cemetery at night and causing serious damage. And I'm not talking about knocking over a vase of flowers over. I'm not talking about chalking things or marking graves so much. I'm talking about Highgate Cemetery is a very old. It was opened in 1838, and it contained a lot of old Victorian vaults, which in turn actually contained a lot of Victorian coffins.
Yes.
And a lot of the bodies weren't buried underground. Okay, the vaults were sealed, but over a period of time, the vaults got broken open, and people used to go into the cemeteries and drag the coffins off shelves. And there was also a group of people in there, a group of Satanists, and I'm talking about genuine Satanists who were using Highgate Cemetery at night. I stress, I'm not talking about the theatrical people you see in the news of the world, or used to see in the news of the world. No, they were serious people, and they were conducting satanic rituals in there. We found the remains of their ceremonies in a couple of vaults. One of these vaults was a small mausoleum right in the heart of Highgate Cemetery. It didn't have any coffins in it. It had a marble floor and a couple of marble busts of people who presumably were buried there. And they made very lethal, potent black electrical markings on the floor. And we found the burnt down stubs of black candles. I mean, really, literally as big as the... And it was obviously in regular usage because the candles were nearly burnt down. We were looking into that at the same time. In 1970, regarding this unexplained phenomenon, we went into Highgate Cemetery to conduct the sounds. For that purpose, we had with us a psychic medium, that is someone who was trained in communicating with, shall we say, earthbound spirits. Don't really like the word spirit, but anyway. To try and find out its purpose. We had certain implements with us. I had a tape recorder. We obviously had cameras, and we cast a circle on the ground of the cemetery, on the flat ground, above the vaults. And adjacent to that we cast a triangle. And the idea was, we used incense, had a very small fire, it wasn't really a fire, it was burning incense. It was for the medium to get the spirit, the entity, to manifest in the small triangle. So she could question it and find out what its earthly purpose was. I also had, and this has been greatly misunderstood, so I'm going to mention it because it's important. I had with me a stake, a pointed stake, and it was engraved with magical symbols. Now attached to that stake was a piece of cord. The purpose of that stake was to cast a magical circle. And it's very simple if you're doing it under rough conditions or not in the house or something. All you do is you put the stake in the ground, you attach it to a piece of string, and you put a more or less symmetrical circle, and that's what we wanted if we can. Cut it short, this ceremony got interrupted by the police. And we suddenly heard the sound of loud voices and flashlights were going all over the place. And we were near the back of the cemetery, but the police were approaching the spot where we were. I had a crazy idea. I thought that if everybody split up in different directions. Most people went towards the front gate. I knew people that lived in a large house on the road that runs outside Highgate Cemetery, and their back garden actually backed onto the cemetery. A very small wall, and you could see the cemetery. I knew the house where it was, and I just thought it was pretty late. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I thought, if I can just get over this small garden wall, okay, if they catch me in the grounds, in the garden, it wouldn't really matter because I knew the people. I'd have just said, look, the police have just turned up, we don't want to hang around to do an explaining. And that would have been the end of it. But I was spotted by a flashlight. Getting nearer and nearer, and the implements I was carrying, which included my tape recorder, which included a camera, I had a few candles, and of course the stake and the piece of cord, and I had some magical symbol parchment, and in my pocket for the purpose of the ritual, which never took place. It's interrupted. And I immediately put these items in the grave, and I caught the name of it, and I recognised it was quite a big grave near the back fence. Soon after that I was actually arrested by the police, and they asked me what I was doing. They took me to Kentish Town Police Station, and I refused to name any of the other people, because having been involved in Wicca myself, I'm quite well aware of how Wicca has been misunderstood down through the ages, not least by the police, who put it all down to Satanism and black magic. I refused to give the police my address. I had a large flat in Highgate, and I also refused to name the other people, quite simply because they weren't doing anything wrong.